Welcome to A2Council Update, a recap of the Ann Arbor City Council meeting on September 15, 2025. This meeting included comments and discussion about spending $271,000 on a media campaign about street parking restrictions during snow events, negotiating terms for the sale of city properties at 415 West Washington and the Kline lot at William and Ashley, rezoning property on Ann Arbor-Saline Rd for a new development behind the Whole Foods, amending the procurement ordinance to increase the limit of what the city administrator can spend or sell without a vote of city council, temporarily amending location restrictions for marijuana businesses, expressing city support for the Treeline Trail project, and removing a requirement for public discussion of parking fee increases. This is the voting chart for the council meeting on September 15, 2025. All agenda items were approved unanimously. There was one absence, Councilmember Ghazi Edwin from Ward 3. This was her 17th absence since taking office in 2022. You can find this voting chart and more information about this meeting at A2Council.com. Like and subscribe if you would like to see more content like this. After introductory remarks, public comments, and staff explanations, Council discussed agenda items for less than 30 minutes. 14 people signed up in advance to offer public comments. 9 people spoke to topics on the agenda. The consent agenda this week included 19 items and expenditures of $4.1 million. 3 items were pulled for discussion. Mayor Christopher Taylor recused himself from 2 of the votes with this explanation.
As folks know, sometimes we, people at council, when they have a financial interest or a potential financial interest, do request the leave to be recused from the vote. QM is a client for which I do work, and so I would request council's acquiescence in stepping down.
Council considered a contract for 3 years of media and creative services in order to educate the public about an on-street parking ban that may be implemented during snow events. Without discussion, the contract was approved unanimously, with the mayor recused. Without discussion, Council unanimously approved a $2.5 million contract for renovations to a new election center. The mayor was again recused from the vote. Council then considered a resolution authorizing the city administrator to negotiate the terms of sale for 2 properties, 415 West Washington and 309 South Ashley, sometimes called the Kline lot. These city-owned properties were among 10 properties that, in 2019, were designated for the development of affordable housing. A staff memo at the time explained that if the city passed a millage and offered additional local resources, these properties could be developed with 1,400 units of affordable housing. In 2020, a prior city council put an affordable housing millage on the ballot and city voters approved it. Since 2023, the current city council has been pursuing the sale of these properties for private development. This week, supporters of the current city council praised the plan to sell city properties at 415 West Washington and the Kline lot.
And the proposals before you tonight would remediate contaminated soil, build out the Treeline Trail, add to the city's budget, and, most importantly, add desperately needed mixed-income housing options during this housing crisis.
So I'm here to speak in favor of resolution to authorize negotiations and sale of the Kline lot and 415 West Washington Street because parking lots and empty parcels are bad uses of space.
I look forward to seeing this great addition to the edge of our downtown, and the revenue from the sale will help fund many of our priorities as a city.
Building housing there will do wonders to help with the housing crisis, reduce our vehicle miles traveled by having people be closer to transit in their daily needs, and bring our Vision Zero numbers down to 0.
Council discussed it for about 7 minutes.
I just wanted to share that I am happy to support the administrator's recommendations about how to proceed on both of these sites. I do have full confidence that since placemaking is articulated as one of our top economic development goals, that our staff is laser focused on this issue.
We do have an increased amount of accessible parking in the downtown, throughout the downtown, and that's, I think, an important innovation and step forward that we've taken as a municipal organization.
The resolution directing negotiations for the sale of 415 West Washington and the Kline lot was approved unanimously. Council then considered the rezoning of property at Ann Arbor-Saline Rd, just behind the Whole Foods. This property is currently zoned office. Rezoning for multifamily residential will allow a new 5-story complex with 225 housing units. Earlier in the evening, public commenters spoke about the project.
I've been wondering what's going to happen with the desolate patch of grass and weeds behind Whole Foods since my parents used to take me shopping for clothes in Mervyn's. It's great that we're finally going to see much-needed housing built here.
While I do support the project, I would hope that the city would do something, if at all possible, to move the setback from 15 feet to 50 feet along Ann Arbor-Saline.
Council discussed the rezoning for about 5 minutes.
Traffic has been flagged as a concern in this area and for this project. The petitioner has expressed willingness to pay for a new traffic light if the city finds that that is warranted.
Councilmember Dish, liaison to the Planning Commission, was mistaken. Several days before the meeting, staff sent a memo to council explaining that there would be no traffic signal, that the developer had not expressed a willingness to pay for one. Staff corrected Councilmember Dish and offered more clarification.
I believe the developer did have conversations with the Planning Commission about a potential traffic signal. Staff did follow up with them after Planning Commission and before this first reading was scheduled, and they haven't committed to anything further. No potential studies for the potential future traffic light at this time.
My understanding from the staff report with the initial transportation study was that there were serious concerns. And I'll just be looking at this carefully, I think, when it comes back for second reading.
Just clarify, how can we get to an additional traffic study or a study looking at the non-motorized transit and whether a light is needed?
As of right now, it would be on the developer to get an additional traffic study to move the traffic signal forward. And we don't have any kind of commitment on that right now.
The rezoning was approved unanimously. At a future meeting, it will be the subject of a public hearing and final approval at second reading. After a brief introduction, Council unanimously approved the rezoning of a small lot behind Argus Farm Stop on Packard. Rezoning will bring its current use into compliance. No new development is planned. At a future meeting, the rezoning will be the subject of a public hearing and final approval at second reading. Council then considered extensive amendments to the city's procurement policy, addressing how money is spent and city assets are disposed of by the city administrator. Other changes would expand council discretion in public-private partnerships in real estate developments. With help from staff, council discussed it for less than 15 minutes. One term prompted discussion. Moving forward, the city administrator would be authorized to increase his own spending limit without further ordinance amendment or council approval. One council member offered an amendment to remove that term.
This proposed amendment tonight would target just the future automatic changes of the purchasing and disposal threshold by removing that element completely, but leaves the remaining elements of the agenda item untouched.
What the amendment removes is a provision for inflationary adjustments based on the consumer price index.
This is incorrect. In 2021, Councilmember Dish voted in support of a ballot question to change the city's procurement policy by city charter amendment. That charter amendment tripled the amount that could be spent without a vote of council, increasing it from $25,000 to $75,000. The amendment also included a provision for inflationary adjustments. The city charter directs that increases happen via ordinance, as was proposed this week. In 2021, Councilmember Redina voted against the charter amendment to raise the procurement amount to $75,000.
There are times when this may still, the lower threshold may still have value. And I can think of at least one instance since I joined council where initially we were considering purchasing some Teslas for the police department, and had there been one Tesla put forward instead of two, it may not have hit this $75,000 threshold. And
this week, regarding an increase from $75,000 to $90,000, he said this.
Ultimately, I too am comfortable with modifying the ordinance in such a way that when future threshold increases need to be made, that the administrator and staff can make that case to council, to this council, to future councils.
The amendment, removing the term allowing the city administrator to increase his own spending limit, was approved unanimously. A second amendment was proposed, addressing another section of the ordinance, which staff summarized in a memo. That section proposed that council would have discretion in choosing contracts for public-private partnerships in real estate development. Council discretion would be an exception to the voter-approved best value rubric for procurement. A council member proposed an amendment to that exception.
So it would read, the city council must determine that the contract provides the best value to the city, and then we would be inserting in a manner that is consistent with the values expressed in the criteria set forth above in section, and then it lists the section of the city code that we, where we enumerate what best value means. I think this ensures that, council must make sure that that contracts are consistent with the best value procurement policy.
The city attorney explained the need for flexibility.
As the city evolves and we do bigger projects with our private entity partners, sometimes when you work with third-party private partners, they are the ones initially doing the improvement, and then the city compensates them after the fact.
This is the model proposed for the public-private partnership currently being negotiated to benefit a private development at State and Eisenhower. The city will purchase $146 million in parking decks from the developer, essentially compensating him after the fact, so that the developer will not have to pay tax on the assets. City support for the parking decks was requested by a developer who has given thousands of dollars in campaign donations to the mayor and members of City Council. The amendment was approved unanimously. As amended, the ordinance changes were approved unanimously at first reading, allowing the city administrator to make purchases and sales of city assets up to $90,000 without a vote of council, and allowing council discretion in interpreting best value in public-private partnerships. At a future meeting, these ordinance changes will be the subject of a public hearing and final approval at second reading. Council then considered amendments to the ordinance regulating marijuana businesses, specifically terms restricting their location at least 1,000 feet away from K through 12 schools. Proposed amendments would temporarily adjust that limit relative to two existing preschools, Doty Montessori on South Ashley and the U School on Plaza Drive. Marijuana businesses have operated within 1,000 feet of those preschools. For the purpose of licensing, the state of Michigan considers them schools, though our local ordinance does not. Earlier in the evening, a public commenter spoke in support.
We're in support of new business C4 on the agenda tonight, and we just want to say thanks for everyone taking this up and making it a priority.
Council explained that the change was temporary for just 1 year.
For these three businesses to continue to operate and to obtain licenses and maintain their licenses. So we're basically keeping them in business while Planning Commission determines our next steps.
The ordinance changes were approved unanimously at first reading. At a future meeting, they will be the subject of a public hearing and final approval at second reading. Without discussion, Council unanimously approved an additional $425,000 to fund a splash pad and playground improvements at Bicentennial Park, previously Southeast Park, on Ellsworth. Council then considered a resolution expressing city support and collaboration with the Treeline Conservancy, a nonprofit organization that is fundraising in support of the Treeline Trail Project. The Treeline Trail Project is a green pedestrian corridor through the city to the river, along the Allen Creek. This week's resolution specifically mentions support for the northern segment, which would bridge over North Main Street, eventually connecting to Broadway Park. Earlier in the evening, public commenters spoke to the resolution.
The enormous elevated bridge connection at the north end isn't well thought out. The bridge would make pedestrians walk much further than taking the at-grade crossing on Depot, and from MDOT's limited perspective, it would deprioritize the need to vastly improve safe transportation options between the river and downtown.
Estimates for constructing the project run to nearly $20 million. By the time it might be built, the number would probably be significantly more. It is an expensive boondoggle.
It doesn't make much sense. You're going over Main Street, you're going to have a 16-foot clearance. You're going over Depot, you're going to have a 16-foot clearance. And then you need to go under the railroad tracks. So any renderings of this has a giant switchback to get under to the railroad tracks. While I think the Treeline Trail project is fine, I think the Signature Bridge is a foolish waste of money.
Council discussed it for about 1 minute.
I think it is important to support. We've got a conservancy that's working to do private fundraising to create the Treeline Trail throughout our community. I look forward to a future that has multiple exciting routes to transport ourselves around the town on bike and foot and other non-motorized means.
The resolution was approved unanimously. Finally, Council considered changes to their meeting calendar in response to an item approved earlier in the meeting. On this week's consent agenda, Council amended their written agreement with the Downtown Development Authority to manage the city's parking. Historically, by agreement, the Downtown Development Authority's parking rates have been subject to review by City Council in a joint meeting where public discussion of the parking rates was required. This week, without discussion, City Council approved removing that entire section of the agreement. The amended agreement authorizes the city administrator to negotiate these parking rates without public discussion or council involvement. In amending the council calendar this week, the joint meeting with the Downtown Development Authority was canceled because it is no longer required. A meeting in November was rescheduled due to an election. The amended calendar was approved unanimously without discussion. City Council went into closed session for about 30 minutes to discuss a privileged and confidential memo received on September 10th, 2025. The meeting adjourned about 9 p.m. without any further public comment. For more information about this meeting, visit A2Council.com.
Welcome to this week's A2Council Moment of Zen.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? It is approved. C3, an ordinance to amend Chapter 14, Purchasing, Contracting, Selling Procedure of Title I of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Did we just do that? We just did that. It was just such an important amendment. Let's do it twice.